of foreign sourced income and under specific conditions for a flat rate of 20% over freelance or employment income. It also provides for the 10% flat rate over pension income, and well, it has become tested throughout these years. It was introduced in 2009, so we have already a huge track record of success, and it has brought many individuals to live in Portugal. So that's, after all, what brings us here today. But in case you want further information on the NHR, you can always check our website, where we have a thorough guide on the tax benefits that this regime brings. One important point is that although the regime is being terminated for new entrants as from the 1st of January 2024, any current beneficiaries of the status will maintain all the benefits with the exact same features. So those that have obtained the NHR in 2018, for example, will benefit from the regime until 2027. But those that obtain it in 2023 will benefit from it until 2032 without any further issue. The budget bill provides that new applicants becoming tax residents in Portugal in 2023, or with the residence visa valid until the 31st of December of 2023, will be able to apply until, on the latter case, until the 31st of March 2024. So we have here let's say a very small transitional period until 31st of March 2024, but only for those that on the 31st of December 2023 already have a residence visa. This has brought many concerns. Why? First, because as many of you know, with the waiting times and the waiting lists that the Portuguese Borders Immigration Services have, as of today, it would be virtually impossible, or at least very difficult, for someone starting the process today or in October to get the full process terminated and with a residence card in their hands until the expected ending date of 31 of December. So what is happening is that there are calls from people from the sector and also from our peers and also from specialists in these matters to extend this transitional period in order to accommodate the expectations and obvious expectations of those that have began the process or are in the process of beginning the application for a residence permit to live in Portugal. This is particularly sensitive, but on the same hand, this is what we have today. And the truth is that what we have today is a proposal that states that only those with a residence visa valid until 31st of December will be able to register as an NHR, and always until the 31st of March 2024. This is, however, likely to be amended on the final wording of the budget bill. What the government is proposing is a sort of new NHR. This new NHR will be rebranded as an incentive to scientific research and innovation, but it only applies to specific categories of professionals. These are higher education professors, qualified employment, but within the specific scope of contractual benefits for productive investment, and R&D jobs for doctorates, people with a doctorate degree. So, as you may anticipate, and although these will have a 20% rate on professional income, exemptions on foreign sourced income such as dividends, capital gains, or interest, and these benefits will be valid also for 10 years. Although this is maintained, we can see that the scope is clearly narrower. So the NHR as it is today, that applies to those that become Portuguese tax resident without having been so in the previous 5 years, is broader than this regime that only applies to these categories of professionals that, at least in the current version, we anticipate won't be significant, at least from my side and from the side of several of our peers, we do not anticipate a large number of beneficiaries considering this current version. This is subject to amendments, as in the other cases, but well, it's what we have today. Alternatively, and I would say more interestingly, for those becoming tax residents of Portugal between the 1st of January 2024 and 31st of December 2026, there is a 50% tax break for employment and freelance income for 5 years. And this applies regardless of the field of expertise of the beneficiary. For instance, someone as myself, as a lawyer, that to the extent I would reside outside of Portugal for 5 years, and then when I would, in my return, I would be able to benefit from this 50% tax break to the extent the annual income is below 250,000 euros. I believe this cap was introduced because several high-profile footballers that have lived in Portugal some years ago have returned and benefited from this regime. So this cap was introduced to some extent limitate the regime of the 50% tax break. This applies to those that haven't not been a resident of Portugal in the previous 5 years, and those that were never a resident of Portugal. And why am I mentioning this point of those that have been resident of Portugal before? Because this amendment is introduced to a regime that only applied until today to those that at some given point in time were residents of Portugal. With this change, it will apply to anyone that hasn't lived in Portugal in any given time. So it will, contrarily to the new NHR, it will broaden the possibility of having beneficiaries, and it will broaden its scope. However, it's valid, as I said, only for those that become tax residents until 2026. And as the bottom line, or as a conclusion of this introduction, we can basically state the following. If you are planning to move to Portugal, and you are still in your active days, or still your main source of income is of either employment income or freelance income, Portugal will still have this very interesting tax benefit of the 50% tax break for 5 years, capped at 250K. For those that, whose main source of income is from passive sources such as dividends, capital gains, interests, rents, well, Portugal will, under the new NHR, become a less attractive jurisdiction, and well, unless you qualify for those professions that are very limited, I would say that the benefits are very, very limited. One thing that I would like to add, just and apologies for coming back and forth, on this new 50% tax break, there is no added value criteria. So I would like to highlight this, because on the NHR, as many of you may know, there is this high added value criteria, and the 20% flat tax rate only applies to those that have an activity that is able to be framed within a specific list of high added value activities. This 50% tax break doesn't make any reference to that list, so it basically applies to any activity. So, having made this introduction, I would like to go to the questions that were raised. We received, just to give you an idea, more than 120 questions. So it was really hard to put them together in a way to answer the most that I can. Please note that there are some that require specific analysis and that I won't be able to at least fully answer on this Q&A. But I do hope that most of you feel that that at least some questions were answered. So let's go one by one and let's think about this together. So first one, is the new NHR officially published? Well, it's the proposal to terminate the current version of the NHR is public, but it's not published in the sense that it's not a law yet. So it's still a proposal subject to discussion, as I mentioned. And the final wording and the final version of it is still unclear. As I said, there is a strong background of political discussions and proposals of amendment being approved. We have, for instance, the example of the golden visa regime that was terminated for real estate investments this year. As you probably recall, on the first stage, the golden visa termination was announced as being some tout court termination, so it would be ended for all types of golden visa, and then subject to further to the discussion, political discussion, and also listening to the people from the sector, the government ultimately ended the golden visa through the acquisition of real estate and kept other types and or other formulas of golden visa. So in this case of the NHR, that might happen too. It's subject to also some bona fide or not from the government, from the members of the parliament, but it's still, as I said, a proposal. It's public, but it's not gazetted in the sense that it's not a law. It will only become a law on the 1st of January 2024, and the final version will be known only by the 29th of November 2023. I would like to understand the rationale behind such decision and proposal. Well, this is quite difficult to analyze without making some political considerations. However, this was firstly announced by the Prime Minister in an interview. And by then, well, nobody on the sector really believed that it would happen at least so quickly. There were in the past several proposals to terminate the golden visa, but they were the NHR, but they were made from far left-wing parties, political parties, and nobody really took it as likely to be approved. So when the Prime Minister announced this in the beginning of October, it was really hard to understand, at least from a timing perspective. What the Prime Minister stated is that the NHR regime has fulfilled its purpose, meaning that there is a housing crisis. There was in the past the need of attracting investments to Portugal and to attract high net worth individuals to Portugal. And currently it still exists, but it has grown, according to the Prime Minister. There is a growing sense of inequality that the regime brings, that is harmful for the standard Portuguese tax resident. So, in a nutshell, there is the understanding that the NHR regime has become obsolete, or at least that it needs changes, and to a certain extent, I also agree that it might need changes, but the take of abolishing it is hard to understand. But the rationale is the inequality that it brings to the Portuguese tax regime, and the fact that it no longer makes sense taking into account other tax benefits that Portugal has. I must also state that Portugal indeed has other tax benefits, either from a corporate income tax perspective, but also from a personal income tax perspective, such as the proposed 50% tax break for active income, a crypto-friendly tax regime, a stock options tax regime that is also very competitive. However, there is no general NHR and no general regime such as the NHR that will apply in the same terms. So it's kind of difficult to explain the rationale, but at the end of the day, the proposal exists, and we must consider it very carefully. Do I anticipate any new programs for those wishing to immigrate with passive income? Well, currently, and quite honestly, no. In the sense that there may be uh, proposals, of course, in that sense, but the point that we see and the strategy that we see from the government is to attract those mainly with active income. This is clear with the 50% tax break and the fact that the NHR regime has been significantly narrowed. So to those with passive income, unfortunately, I do not see likely to any carve out being introduced or any new regime related to that. How do you assess the probability of this version of the budget to be approved as is, NHR be cancelled as proposed? Well, as I said, there is a strong background of proposals being introduced. So I would say that the current version is likely to be approved, but there will be amendments in the sense mainly to enforce the transitional period. I believe that the transitional period will be worked and will be better. The final version will be better in the sense that it will protect those that already have taken the decision to transfer their residence to Portugal, but are in the process of doing so. So I believe that we will have news in that regard. But quite honestly, I believe that there is no turning back in certain aspects, meaning that, for instance, the part of the passive income, as I said before, will not be changed. But on the part of the transitional period, I believe we will have measures to protect the expectations of those that want to relocate to Portugal. What will happen to the current NHR beneficiaries? Well, basically, nothing will happen. The current NHR beneficiaries will be will maintain the benefits for as long as they are NHRs or they are considered residents of Portugal. So so everything will be the same for them. So no impact. If I apply for NHR tax benefits now, will they continue for the next 10 years? Yes, true. So if you apply until the 31st of December 2023, they will apply for 10 years until 2032. You will lose, if you apply now, if you are a resident just in this final months of 2023, you will lose almost 1 year of benefit, but that should not be too relevant. But you will benefit from it until 2032. Will pension income be included in any replacement? Well, as of today, we do not have any indication in that regard. Quite honestly, it doesn't seem to be the priority of the government. So until, from what I see, what we can anticipate, similarly to the question on the passive income, I don't believe that we will have any specific provision for those deriving pension income. Do you believe Madeira might develop a policy of its own? Well, Madeira, as some of you may know, has in the past shown the intent of having more beneficial tax regimes, or in the case of the Golden Visa, the president of the government showed interest in keeping the investments in real estate routes. But quite honestly, the truth is that Madeira is limited in the sense that it's an autonomous region and it's not an independent region. So Madeira is limited to certain aspects of its tax regime. Madeira doesn't have its own tax regime. So under the Portuguese constitution, Madeira may adapt certain points, such as reducing until 30% the general tax rates, and it does so in the corporate income tax rates, for instance, in some brackets of the personal income tax rates, but Madeira is not allowed to create the regime such as the NHR, at least in the current version of the Portuguese constitution and on of the law that and the law that provides and gives the autonomous regions the ability to adapt its own uh, financial aspects. I just noticed that I read this next question mistakenly in the notes that I had, which I anticipated any new programs for those wishing to immigrate with passive income. I already answered that. Honestly, that might happen, but it's not foreseen in the current version of the law, as I said. An EU citizen need a sign. Will an EU citizen need a signed lease contract, and of what duration to obtain the certificate of residence of the EU and apply for an NHR? Well, for applying for the NHR, you first need to become a tax resident of Portugal. You become a tax resident of Portugal. For becoming so, you need an accommodation in Portugal, either by a rental agreement, a deed where the registration of an immovable property in Portugal under your name. So you need a place to live, to demonstrate that you live. So as a signed lease contract, preferably a long-term lease contract, is fundamental for that purpose. On the part of the certificate of registration as an EU citizen, we never had any issue with our clients, but we are aware of some cases in some municipalities that require the beneficiary or the citizen to live for at least 3 months in that area for issuing the certificate of residence of the EU. This is something that we only heard through contacts with our peers, but that we never experienced. But it's a note that I would like to give. On our side, this never really happened, but it might happen with some of those in specific municipalities. It is fundamental to become, when you are an EU citizen, you must register as such in the municipality. Only after that first step, you can go to the Portuguese tax authorities and register as a tax resident of Portugal. Once you are a tax resident of Portugal, you apply for the NHR. Can a non-EU spouse apply for the NHR at the same time? Well, the fact that it's the NHR is a tax regime, so it's not it doesn't deal with immigration issues. But for you to register as a tax resident of Portugal, you need to have a valid residence permit in Portugal. So I would advise you to check with an immigration specialist the criteria for you to apply for potential FMO reunification, for instance, so that your non-EU spouse may live in Portugal legally and apply for the NHR. From a purely tax perspective, that's not an issue. With a German passport, is it still possible to get the NHR status? What are the requirements to still become a resident and eligible for the NHR status before January 1st? So similarly to the question before, you need to go to the municipality of where you plan to live. And once you have a lease agreement, or if you own a property in Portugal with the deed in your hands, you go to the municipality, register as being living in such municipality, and then you register in the tax authorities as being a resident of Portugal. This is assuming that you already have a Portuguese tax number, etc. You are eligible, if you do so, before 31st of December 2023 to obtain the NHR status before the deadline. Next question is whether can I still get tax breaks as a foreigner if I move to Portugal in 2024? Yes. So basically, as I said, you have the new NHR that has a narrower scope, as I said, and most likely won't apply to you. And you have the 50% tax break over active income to the extent you have not been a resident of Portugal in the previous 5 years. Do I need to declare my property abroad? Well, once you become a tax resident of Portugal, you need to declare your worldwide income here. It doesn't mean that you will be taxed here under your worldwide income. Then tax treaties will determine the allocation of taxing rights or will restrict the taxing rights, but you'll need to declare your worldwide income as from the day you became a Portuguese tax resident. Then you will need to declare the number of your bank accounts also, but only the number, not the balance of such bank accounts. Most importantly, Portugal will tax your income, will not tax your property abroad. So I'm not sure if this is intended to ask if Portugal will tax any property you may have abroad. It will not. It will not be the case. You will only need to declare the income and the numbers of your foreign bank accounts, but only the numbers, not the balance. The new 50% tax reduction seems to be an extension of the return program, but allows everyone, regardless of nationality. Please bear in mind that the return program already provided the possibility of accessing it, regardless of the nationality. The previous requirement was that the beneficiary would have to have been a resident of Portugal at some point in time. But it could be, well, have the example of several football players, Argentinians, for example. So that's not a problem. There is an extension, yes, for those that have not ever been a residents of Portugal at all. So yes, there is an extension of the return program that actually is no longer a return program. It's more an coming to Portugal program. Well, we'll have to figure out some new word for it. But please note that it was never a matter of nationality. Actually, if it would be a matter of nationality, it would be contrary, for instance, to the EU laws. What is the best to update our fiscal address, online or physical? Well, the jury is out on this one because, well, quite honestly, I would prefer going to the tax office and doing everything in person. But the point is that nowadays the tax authorities work on a closed door basis, meaning that you have to schedule an appointment, and then you can, once you have that appointment, you go there and you take care of the tax change, the tax address change on that very same moment. It's a procedure that's concluded on the very same day. However, since the tax authorities are working on a closed door basis, there is an online procedure that works. For those that are Portuguese and have a Portuguese citizen card, it's actually quite easy. For those that do not have a Portuguese citizen card, that are foreign but have access to the portal of the Portuguese tax authorities, it's relatively simple to do so. It's a two-step procedure, but it's relatively simple, and you can do it online. So I would say that my advice would be, in case you live in an area which would be mainly in interior areas or smaller cities, that's where you can go there physically, I would advise you to do so. Also, for have a double check at the tax office or of your documents. If you're if you're not able to get an appointment, then try to do it online, and it will, in principle, it will be fine. What is the procedure, assuming that the applicant already has a residence permit, for granting NHR status, and whether it is possible by submitting the application in November to obtain approval? Well, so if you have a residence permit, you must go to the Portuguese tax authorities with your residence permit of CEF, You register with your Portuguese address, and then on the web portal of the Portuguese tax authorities, you apply for the NHR. Usually, the NHR status is granted within 24 hours. It's very simple because there is basically a digital cross-check of the two requirements, which are you are a Portuguese tax resident now, and number two, in the previous 5 years, you were not a Portuguese tax resident. So once this check is done, the status is attributed. It's usually it's in 24 hours, the process is complete. So Portugal is giving the NHR status to people that become Portuguese residents on the 31st of December 2023. At the time that the Portuguese government announced the elimination of NHR, there will not be enough time to comply with the requirement of 183 days of stay in Portugal. How is it possible to comply with this requirement by the end of the NHR status? Well, the Portuguese tax residency is triggered by 2 points. First point, living more than 153 days here. Second point, which would be your case, is at any given point of the year, having a place in Portugal, so permanent abode, with the intent of using it as your permanent dwelling. So there is, since some years ago, the concept of partial residency in Portugal, meaning that you can be tax resident of Portugal for 2 months and non-tax resident of Portugal for 10 months. So there is no issue in not having the 183 days in Portugal, and you can indeed just say become tax resident of Portugal and today and be resident of Portugal and from today until the end of the year, and that won't be a challenge to the extent you have your permanent abode here in Portugal. We would like to know if it is compulsory to cancel the residence registration in the Netherlands before registering in Madeira Islands. Is there still some time to apply for the non-habitual resident status? Well, from a Portuguese perspective, it's not mandatory to deregister yourself from any point of the world as tax resident. The point is that typically countries tax their tax residents over their worldwide income. That is the case, for instance, of Portugal, and that might be the case, in principle will be the case of the Netherlands. So when you have two countries wanting to tax your worldwide income, you have a situation of double taxation. Double taxation will not be good, of course. So you are advised to cancel the residence registration in the Netherlands and then registering yourself as tax resident of Portugal. These articulation will prevent cases of double taxation and will avoid having issues in the future, and it will avoid you having to pay double taxes. Is there any way to expedite my residency and NHR registration purposes? I've applied for my D7 and waiting for approval. Well, there is no specific way of expediting it. So Portugal does not have, let's say, an urgency fee that you might pay for expediting these. I would advise for those that have an ongoing application, either for D7, D2, D8, Golden Visa, whatever, to check with your immigration advisors whether there could be a way, or whether they expect, number one, to receive the approval or residence card until the end of the year, and number two, together with your immigration advisor and with the tax specialists, to analyze whether you could transfer your residency to Portugal already, even without the issuance of such residency card, and declare yourself as being a tax residency. This is something that is possible, at least in theory, and that we are exploring with our clients. So although I believe there will be a transitional period that will allow everyone that is under this process to register as an HR, this is under discussion and will be proposed. Although there is this possibility, I would advise you to start checking or do already the check of what is the status of your process, and what you can do to a certain extent, declare yourself as being already living in Portugal and becoming a Portuguese tax resident. If I applied for an NHR but then changed my plans and I had to stay in UK, can I switch back tax residency? Well, yes. Actually, I believe that will happen quite a lot. So people will register as tax residents of Portugal in 2023, will apply for an NHR, and then at some point in time in 2024, will switch back to their previous country of residence and will freeze the NHR status. What happens here is that the NHR has a fixed window. So the years that you will live in Portugal will not be added to the end date of your NHR status. So you will basically lose the benefit. But the fact is that you can change. You can change your address. I wouldn't do so. I wouldn't, play games with tax residency because, well, at any point in time, I'm afraid the tax authorities may challenge something. Well, we never know. But in theory, you are allowed to do so. So you can apply for the NHR now, secure the NHR for 10 years, then switch your tax residency back to the UK and live 5 years in the UK. And once you come back to Portugal, you will still have 5 or 4 years of NHR ahead of you. Is it mandatory / compulsory to present tax returns from last 5 years in order to be approved for the NHR program? Well, I received this question several times, and the answer is no. What happens that to benefit from the NHR, you must have not been a resident of Portugal in the previous 5 years. If you have an inspection, you must be in a position of demonstrating that you are not a tax resident of Portugal in a given year, in the previous 5 years. That can be done through tax returns, through certificates of tax residency. So although it is advisable to keep record of your tax residency, upon the application for the NHR program, you don't need to present any tax returns. Is a D7 residence visa pre-31st of December 2023 enough to register for the NHR? Well, the current version of the law states that a visa issued before the 31st of December 2023 is valid for registration as an NHR until the 31st of March 2024. So in case you have a residence visa already, it will be quite simple to secure the NHR status. More complicated is, as I was mentioning before, are those that are still waiting for an appointment at the consulate, for the scheduling of the initial interview, those, well, that are in a more premature or first stage of the process, or those that have not started the process at all. But as I said, there were news in the last week, actually, from official sources of the government stating that they are aware of such cases and that they want to protect the expectations of those that want to transfer their residence to Portugal and are on the process of doing so. We applied for the Golden Visa in December 2021, had our biometrics in June and July this year. We don't have our residence cards until mid-2024. Is there any hope for us getting the NHR? Well, there is. I would advise you to consult your immigration advisors. But in case you already have a property in Portugal, and there are ways of declaring you as resident of Portugal. So I would advise you to check with your advisors. But since you are also in the very end of this process, I honestly believe that you will also be covered by the transitional period that's that I consider likely to be inserted in the final wording of the 2024 budget. If the current NHR effectively ends for new applicants on the 1st of January 2024, and today is 10th of October 2023, and I have not started an application, does this mean I'm too late? Well, this depends. If it's the NHR application, well, for the applying for the NHR, you still have to it depends if you are a resident, an EU citizen or non-EU citizen. If you are a non-EU citizen and you must secure first a residence permit, well, you legally you will not be able to secure a residence permit until the end of the year under the current waiting times. But you can rely on the possibility of issuance of it's not of issuance of extension of the transitional period that might be inserted in the final wording of the budget. Also, if you are an EU citizen, well, you then have to find an accommodation here, register at the municipality, register as a Portuguese tax resident, and after this process, register as an NHR. For registering as an NHR, in case that's your question, well, once you change your residency by having an accommodation here, well, you apply for it online, as I said, and it's approved in 24 hours. But it's a case-by-case basis. So having the information that I have here on this question is not sufficient to give let's say a proper answer or a answer that covers all the aspects. But well, it's not too late for sure. But in case you're not a non-EU citizen, well, you're running out of time. Definitely, you may start it relying mainly on the transitional period. If you are an EU citizen, for sure, but you need accommodation, you need to secure the EU tax residence certificate, you need to change everything. So you obtain a Portuguese tax ID. So you should find a tax advisor or an immigration specialist. Of course, we are happy to help you in case you need, but it's subject to a specific case analysis. How can I check my current status, fiscally domiciled or not, with finances? Well, that's actually a question that I receive a lot. I kind of understand that because throughout my career, I met several people that mistakenly registered themselves as tax residents of Portugal. We had, for instance, digital nomads that came here for a certain period of time or that needed to make a transaction here in Portugal and gave the Portuguese address and mistakenly became tax residents, and then afterwards they don't know it. Or even those that immigrated, that went to live abroad and never changed their status. So the best way is to, in case you have the access to the web portal of the Portuguese tax authorities, the so-called Portal das Finanças, is to access it and check your personal data. In case it appears a Portuguese address, well, you basically are a Portuguese tax resident. Even if it's a mistake for registration purposes, you are registered Portuguese tax resident. You can then submit a request in case you are not resident of Portugal. You can submit a request of correction of that, but that's a side hustle, I would say. In any case, it's on that page. In case there is a non-Portuguese address, then you are a non-resident of Portugal. Alternatively, you can go to the local tax office or to a tax office and give your Portuguese NIF, your Portuguese tax ID, and they will tell you if you are registered or not and what is your address in the Portal das Finanças. So this is we are reaching the end of this Q&A session. It's quite a complex topic that we found here today. In case your question was not covered, please apologize me for not having addressed it. It's mainly for two reasons, because first, number one, we have limitations in terms of time, and number two, it should be because of it requires specific analysis, and it requires us to delve into the specificities of your case. In any case, please feel free to email me. I will also follow up on questions that I have not answered with more information and more inputs, so you will hear from me.
And in case you do not hear from me, please feel free to email me. And I hope to have made things clear. In a nutshell, I would take the following. So there is a proposal still subject to amendments, but that provides a clear intent of terminating the NHR, as we know, until for new entrants until the 31st of December 2023, with an application still possible until the 31st of March 2024 for those with residence visas issued until the 31st of December 2023. Case-by-case analysis should be seen in your case for the cases that have an ongoing procedure with CEF of obtaining a D7, a D2, a D8, or a golden visa. You should check with your immigration specialist in which what is the current status of your process and the feasibility of changing your tax address until 31st of December 2023. Please feel free to reach out to us in case you need assistance on that. For those with active income that only will be able to change to Portugal from the 1st of January 2024, there will be a 50% tax break applicable to any activity. So no added value criteria for this new tax incentive. New NHR will be possible, but with a narrower scope that will probably not apply to the most of us or the most of you. And Portugal still has other tax benefits from a corporate tax perspective, also from a personal tax perspective, that may be interesting for you. Although I believe that for those that have mainly passive income or pension income, the end of the NHR is particularly harmful. Last points for current beneficiaries that might be with us, no impact from this termination. You will be able to benefit from the NHR until the end of your NHR status, which depends on the date that you obtained it. It's valid for 10 years, as you know. You have my emails, also the email of my dear colleague Claudia. We are, of course, available to assist in anything you may need. Thank you for joining us today on these 15 minutes of monologue. I hope you found it interesting and useful. And have a nice day. And we see each other in the next event that we'll organize. And also, please feel free to reach out and also to check our blog and our website and our newsletter on updates regarding this process that will still take some time until we have the final wording of the termination of the NHR or the non-termination of it. Thank you.